Welcome back to the tour. This will be part 3. We come down between the two herb beds and we're in the main vegetable area. The potatoes first, they're growing wonderfully. According to the tops, I'm going to have one good potato harvest this year. That's the worst bed. A couple didn't come out, but that's doing alright too. The rest of them, and just look at that. And look at the red ones. But before I continue on talking about potatoes, let's talk about this thing. And I'm going to get seed. So I got a really nice dill plant there. I'm going to have to make sure I get the seed and sprinkle some of it over in the herb bed, but then take the rest, of course, in the house. And there's two more dillweed plants growing up down there. And the other volunteer in the potatoes, I think this is the only other volunteer of note, that's chamomile. There's the last bed of potatoes I planted. These squash here, that's mashed potato. I soaked some seeds, and when they started to sprout, I brought them out and I poked them down there. And you can see how well they're growing. So, I don't know, I'll get some squash out of them yet. There's another one down here. The ones that I planted initially, now why do they seem to have different leaves? Anyway, they're starting to flower. And I have a really big squash plant here. We'll have to look down below to see what the flower plants are. And this is starting to take off, this one. And that's a male. But right down there, there's a female flower starting. So very soon I'll have a fruit set on that one. I am quite happy with these beans. So tiger's eye bean. I thought they were all bush type beans. But as you can see, it's got a really long piece that's growing as a vine. And here's one. Comes out and is wrapping around that post. I could put it in a taller post and get it to wrap and see how far it's going to grow. And I have two wrapped around this one. So I got to remember that for next year at least. When I plant tiger's eye beans, stick in a pole beside each plant maybe, and let them just wind up the pole. But they're flowering and growing beautifully. So this is the ones I set. And back here is the ones that I did by transplants, and some of them survived. There was nothing right there, so I let that potato plant, that volunteer potato, I let that grow because there was nothing else growing there. And there's another little one that came up down there. There's also a volunteer carrot here. And these two squash, they are, no, I don't have enough memory to remember them. Vegetable marrow. So those two squash are vegetable marrow. The chickpea plants are coming along well. And what I did here, I had 2 packets of lettuce seed. And I just sprinkled them out and roughed over with the rake and let it go. And I've done the same thing over here. Now apparently, packet of seed I put here, the seeds are much more viable because, as you can see, there's lettuce coming up all over. Too thick. I should have tried to spread them out more than that. There are lettuces coming up. So I think this was the head lettuce on this side. And that's a leaf lettuce. Those were planted a week ago or something. Rhubarb grows slower in the shade, but if you've got a shady spot and you don't have anything to plant there, plant rhubarb. I mean, it never gets any sun. Well, this out here gets a little bit of morning sun, but only like an hour or two. And that bit in there gets no sun at all. Now back over here in the corner, I have my first 2 mushroom logs. Oh, it escaped me now what the kind of mushrooms they are. Oyster mushrooms I have planted in those. So next year we shall see. Hopefully next year we'll get some oyster mushrooms out of those. And I had a little bit left over, so I kind of mixed it in among the wood chips that's in the paths on the ends here. So some might grow up there as well. Just noticed I got some maple trees that I can't very well let grow right here, I don't think, anyway. I'll have to think about that. No, I can't let them grow here. I'll have to dig them up and move them somewhere. This is the turnip on the Shady Plot. They're doing okay. You'll see why I said just okay here in a minute. Slugs did finally come and kind of eat a little bit at these cabbage and whatnot here, but not too badly though yet. And so I might get some nice heads here. And this is the kohlrabi. See, it's starting to swell up. That one over there, and the last one, so 3. Might get some beautiful kohlrabi here, and of course kale. I get some really beautiful kale here. Now I can start harvesting away. Over here in the sunny plot, you see, the rutabaga is doing much better. And the plant that I was wondering what it was, it's Sweet William. Nice little pop of color in the bed of rutabaga. My rhubarb patch is looking kind of the worse for wear. I've got some stalks dying. It's been so hot that I haven't been harvesting it. I think the beets are doing nicely. Oh yeah. You see some swelling up there now. So I'll get a few nice beets out of that this year. I finally come and took out all that clover that was growing in this bed. I stuck the fork in and loosened it all up. And I had to. I mean, the clover was up. I couldn't even get the strawberries out of it, really. So I said, oh, time has come, and I did clear out that pathway as well. I haven't been growing, the plants haven't been growing that great yet. But I expect when the weather cools down, now they'll take right off. Getting the strawberries all throughout. That's wonderful. How many did I say? 14 or something? Now this one over here, you see I quite disturbed it when I was using the fork here. And it laid over. But it didn't die, it's coming back. So it survived. Now here's a volunteer parsnip. I'm going to leave that one there. And when it grows, I'll give it to my aunt. But of course the carrots, I'm excited to see what carrots comes of that, because they are from the plant we grew last year. Now, last year I had a little finger here, and apparently I left a carrot in the ground. So the carrot grew up. The one umbro is wide open already. This is a heirloom plant, so when I collect for seed from that, that is definitely little finger seed. So that's nice. Even though at some point I'll figure out why this bed don't really germinate very well. The new seeds that I put in when I reseeded this July the 10th. Oh, they still have time then. They might come up. I reseeded on July the 10th, but there's nothing showing there yet from the reseed. Unless that's one there. Now, in this bed, you see, tomato, tomato. There's other tomatoes growing here someplace. I've seen quite a few volunteer tomatoes growing up around here. This is amaranth. You see, when you get amaranth to grow good, if you cultivate it, I mean, look at this plant. Beautiful plant, eh? And nice big leaves. They're very good salad greens. You can use them in place of spinach. So when I harvest this now, well, this one I can take up roots and all because there's no carrot growing close to it. But I'm going to see what the stalk itself is like, if that's tasty. But some really beautiful amaranth plants I have growing in these few beds right here. The thing about it is, if you grew amaranth, and it doesn't matter what kind of amaranth you grow, this is the red-rooted amaranth, which people consider a weed, it'll make a weed of itself because it spreads by seed and it spreads profusively, and it'll just be popping up all over. The same as borage or any of those other plants that reseed readily. Jacob's cattle beans, flowering beautifully. Now, these biggest ones here are the ones that I initially planted back when I planted out the transplants. These you see here, small ones, planted on July the 10th. So that was only 2 weeks ago. And it took about a week for them to pop up. And now they're up that size. They'll be flowering and producing long before the growing season's over. Some of these is a resow. I think I resowed them earlier, so they're bigger. And I have 2 squash here. Those squash were Burgess Buttercup. Just barely starting to flower. So there's 2 Burgess Buttercup squash right there. And the rest, I pretty much got a full bed of Jacob's cattle beans. So I should get a good harvest. This one here is a spaghetti squash. I'll show you. There's the last 2 beds of potatoes I planted, so one would expect them to be the smallest of all the potatoes. They're coming along just beautifully. Most of the flowers that's growing here, you see, is the mallow. So I have 2 versions of mallow, the pink version and the white version you see back there. Now, so I was calling these flowers delphinium. It's not delphinium. It's hollyhock. They're not going to grow very tall this year. They are perennials, so next year they might grow their full height. They're still alive. The one down there, he's getting covered up in grass right now. I did transplant a borage over to here, but I don't think it's going to come to much. There's a hollyhock down there that seems to be doing well among the grass. So that's good. I think I got to come through there. Oh, here's the biggest of the, I go around the other side. The biggest of the volunteer tomato plants. I mean, it's as big as the those little runts that I put down by the front fence. 1, 2. That one there. And then some smaller ones here. And it looks like it's going to start to flower. I mean, that's a volunteer tomato plant. I didn't say that there. So, it's like, wow. These are 2 volunteer squash, so once again, we don't know what they are until they produce. But it's one of the bush type squash and getting pretty big. The soldier bean are the latest. They are starting to flower. I think they're somewhere. Just the flower buds. They don't have anything on them. These 2 here, that's Jacob's cattle that are flowering there. I planted some. See, the problem is it's better for me to stand on that side, but then my shadow gets in the way. Chickpeas here. Along here and over there where those Jacob's cattle beans are. Looks like I put 2 in that hole, but it's growing up there and going up there and over right there. Another one. I count 4 there right now. There are some onion seedlings that decided to germinate really late that I put in here. I don't know if they'll come to anything because they're long day onions, which means they have to go through a period of long days before they will swell up into bulbs. I'll mention that again there in a minute. Over here, planted them out, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just counted 7, 8, 9 chickpea plants growing up here. So they germinated much better on this side, I don't know. Now, that is closer to the high water table. I don't know if that makes a difference. But at any rate, yeah, chickpeas will be a go. It's just a matter now of fine-tuning the germination rate. Of course, chamomile and cosmos are growing up in here, but still loving it. So yeah, the reason why I mentioned that about going through a period of long days, there are some people who were kind of worried that they had big onion tops and there was no bulbing up down beneath. But a long day onion, they go through a period of growth when the days are getting up to be 12, 14 hours long. And when the days start to noticeably get shorter, that's when they start to bulb up. And you notice mine now are just starting. and we're a little over a month past. There's another one over there, a little bit out the ground. They're just starting to bulb up now, and we're a little over a month past the summer solstice, so the days are starting to get noticeably shorter, and from now on they'll bulb up. That one's bubbling up too. I was kind of wondering if he would. This is one of the ones that was there already, or yeah, because this is Alyssa Craig. That red one was one that was there when I planted them, and it's bulbing up. So I don't know why it's like that, but okay. Need to let it do what it does. So I ended up with a full bed of black turtle beans. After resowing, of course, the initial transplants, they all died. But the ones that I resowed are just as big as the ones that I planted earlier. They aren't flowering that much yet, but there are flower buds on them. So they will come along here just sometime soon. That's our seed plant there for Brussels sprouts. Now this plant came from a seed from Jade Cross. Jade Cross is a hybrid, so the plant that will be F1, this plant will be F2, so the seed from this will be an F3 cross of whatever Jade Cross is. As you can see, we'll have 1,000 seeds, and we'll be able to play around with it and see what becomes of them. And the garlic leaves are starting to turn brown. Up on the top now, that's probably because of the heat. Put the lower ones down below. That means they'll be ready soon, about the same time as previous years. Give you a little more of a overhead view. That's the garden in late July. I'm going to swing around here. You'll see the Shady Plot. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And now we'll talk about the trees that we've been planting out around. I'll see you in the next video.